Hello everyone, this is Naerina from 40k Theories, and welcome to this new episode of 40k Lore for Newcomers. For this episode, nominated on Patreon by Atlas2077, we will be taking a brief look at the Celestial Lion Space Marine chapter. This video will be a brief overview for certain events that may be explored in greater depth within additional videos in the future. So, without further ado, let's begin.
We are sons of dawn and we know nothing of surrender, even when victory is out of reach. What concerns us is injustice, ignominy. If we could be said to fear anything, it is the shame of our legacy being fouled by lies.
The Celestial Lions, a loyalist chapter of the Adeptus Astartes, descended from the highly famed and respected Imperial Fists Legion. Like all Space Marines, each battle brother of the Celestial Lions is a genetically augmented transhuman super soldier that is larger, stronger, and more resilient than a typical human. Over the course of their existence, the Celestial Lions have proven themselves to be stalwart and unwavering defenders of humanity, protecting countless Imperial worlds from both Xenos and traitor forces alike. However, while the chapter have acquired many notable victories and battle honors throughout their relatively short history, the Celestial Lions are a chapter that is now perilously close to extinction. Because of the chapter's strong moral principles and hatred of perceived injustices, this has led to the Celestial Lions inadvertently making a powerful enemy within the Imperial government, one that will not rest until the chapter has been utterly destroyed. Since then, tragedy after tragedy has befallen the chapter, leaving only a figurative handful of warriors left to maintain the chapter's legacy. Despite this, the Celestial Lions continue to fight for the Emperor and the Imperium's innumerable citizens, and like the beasts that serve as their namesake, the chapter will continue to fight with pride, courage, and unrelenting ferocity.
If the Imperium remembers us at all, it will be as one of mankind's most grievous failures. But we have not failed mankind. Mankind has failed itself. The bitter hearts and closed minds of weak men and women will see us dead before dawn.
The exact founding of the Celestial Lions themselves remains unknown, although the chapter itself has been documented as being created sometime around M38. Sometime following the events of the 25th founding, the Celestial Lions would be one of 3 chapters selected in order to maintain vigil over a nebula known as Ilara's Veil, a task that the chapter would devote themselves to fiercely, alongside the Star Scorpions and Emperor Spears chapters. However, the chapter spirals towards extinction would begin in late M41 with the events of the Khatan insurrection. In 988 M41, the world of Qatar would erupt into open revolt which, unbeknownst to the Imperium at the time, was due to both the Khatan priesthood and planetary governor falling to the worship of a chaos god Slanesh. 5 battle companies from the Celestial Lions, along with the forces of Inquisitor Apollyon, would travel to Qatar in order to crush what was initially suspected to be a minor rebellion. After coming into conflict with traitor planetary defense forces and renegade forces from the Astra Militarum, the Inquisitor would come to learn the true extent of the chaotic corruption that had befallen the world. After a 3-month-long campaign, the rebellion had been crushed by the Celestial Lions, and the chapter's warriors returned to their ship and set course to their homeworld of Elysium 9. But, as the Astartes left Qatar's orbit, the remaining elements from the Imperial naval fleet would begin subjecting the world to an intense orbital bombardment. The Celestial Lions would learn that this bombardment had been ordered by Apollyon, an act which horrified and angered the Astartes. Wally the Soul attempted to halt the bombardment, but was incapable of belaying the orders of an Inquisitor, resulting in Qatar being purged of all life. This series of events would result in the Celestial Lions being highly prominent and vocal critics of the Inquisition, with the chapter publicly condemning the organization for what they believed to be an entirely unnecessary action. Little did the chapter realize that they had effectively signed their own death warrant, for the agents of the Inquisition would not tolerate having their authority questioned, not even by the Adeptus Astartes. Shortly after the destruction of Qatar, the Celestial Lions would experience the first of their many misfortunes. The chapter would dispatch a number of senior officers to Terra in order to bring their case before the High Lords of Terra, although the ship would never reach its intended destination. The Astartes vessel, at least officially, veered of course due to an unexpected and highly intense warp storm, which resulted in the ship manifesting deep within Orc territory. Despite this, the Celestial Lions remained undeterred, viewing the loss of their delegates as being little more than an unfortunate accident. The chapter continued performing their duties, seemingly oblivious to the fact that they had an enemy in the Inquisition who had already begun taking steps to ensure the death of the Celestial Lions.
Our enemies do not move in the light, where they run the risk of facing our blades, nor are they truly in the shadows. But they occupy positions of power so far above us in the hierarchy of man that exact identities become meaningless. They have the power and influence to deceive us, and deceive us they did.
Over the course of their relatively short history, the Celestial Lions would prove themselves as true scions of Rogal Dawn, exemplifying their Primarch's indomitable spirit and prowess upon the battlefield. The most notable of these conflicts, however, which would also prove to be the most disastrous for the chapter's warriors, was the Third War of Armageddon. In 998 M41, the Orc warlord Ghazghkull mac Uruk Thraka would launch his second invasion of the Imperial Hiveworld of Armageddon, almost 57 years to the day after his previous war for the world had begun. The Celestial Lions would be one of many Spacemarine chapters that would come to the world's aid, with the Lions contributing the entirety of their chapter assets towards the Imperial war effort, and they were assigned to the defense of Hive Volcanus. However, almost immediately after their arrival, the chapter began to suffer horrendous casualties due to being frequently given inaccurate or even entirely false intelligence that would lead to the chapter's warriors frequently being ambushed by overwhelming Orc forces. The chapter's fleet in orbit fared little better, as their ships were ambushed or deliberately directed into Orc-held space as they sought to replenish supplies. Thunderhawk gunships en route to reinforce Hive Volcanus with additional warriors would be regularly shot down by Imperial anti-air batteries, while those returning to their ships in orbit would be destroyed by their supposed allies. While a number of high-ranking officials through the Armageddon forces had their suspicions to the contrary, these losses were officially classified as being the result of ill fortune. During the Battle of Mannheim Gap, the Celestial Lions would lose 4 entire companies following a devastating ambush by the Orcs, although the chapter would continue to battle fiercely despite the overwhelming odds. What had begun to truly concern the chapter, however, was that each of the chapter's surviving apothecaries were being picked off by sniper fire as they attempted to harvest the gene seed of their fallen brothers. While official records state that these snipers were Orcish in origin, the weapons utilized by the snipers were Imperial in origin and wielded with a degree of skill that was arguably beyond the capabilities of an Orc. A small number of surviving Lions were able to break through the Orc lines and retreat to the safety of Volcanus Hive, although the chapter's captains, the majority of their chaplains, and all but one of their apothecaries had been slain. The final apothecary would be found dead shortly after the survivors had returned to Volcanus, sporting a single lash wound to his temple, leaving only a total of 96 warriors remaining within the entire chapter. A sergeant named Ikini Dubaku, who had taken command over the remaining Celestial Lions, would petition Grimaldus, Reclusiarch of the Black Templars chapter, to grant the Celestial Lions their last rites before they returned to Mannheim Gap, in order to die with honor alongside their brothers. Much to the chapter's surprise, Grimaldus instead chose to rally the remaining forces from Hive Hellsridge in order to march into battle alongside the remaining Celestial Lions, so as to grant the chapter a chance to regain their lost honor. Despite Imperial forces suffering heavy losses, Dubaku would slay the orc warboss Thogfang in combat, before Grimalda's called in reinforcements from the Black Templars and Knights of Dawn chapters to purge the remainder of the orcs within the Manheim Gap. Following the culmination of the battle, Dubaku, who had proved himself as a great leader to his brothers, would be appointed by High Marshal Helbrecht of the Black Templars as chapter master of the Celestial Lions. Helbrecht would then grant him a set of ancient and ornate power armor that dated back to the time of the Horus Heresy, as well as the strike cruiser, the Seventh Son, as gifts to the Lions. The Celestial Lions would then leave Armageddon in order to return to their homeworld to rebuild their chapter, escorted by a small detachment of Black Templars to help defend them against any actions from the Inquisition. Several years later, following the creation of a colossal warp rift known as the Cicatrix Maledictum, the chapter's homeworld would be invaded by a massive chaos warband known as the Exiliarchy. The forces of chaos would prove to be so overwhelming that the remaining Celestial Lions were forced to retreat, evacuating as much of the world's population as they could before abandoning the world to the traitors. Dubaku would petition the Emperor Spear's chapter to relocate the remainder of the Celestial Lions to the Spear's homeworld of Nimenton, although he would be assassinated shortly thereafter by an inquisitorial assassin. The final fate of the Celestial Lions is currently unknown.
Your future life shall be a series of trials, one after the other, until you attain the glory that is your due at the side of the Emperor. You shall face the hardest first, so that we know we are not wasting our time.
The Celestial Lions are a mostly Codex-compliant chapter, although the chapter utilizes a number of different terms for the various ranks and positions held by ranking officers. Company captains are known as war leaders, while squad sergeants are designated as pride leaders. The psychic warriors of the chapter's librarians are branded as spirit walkers, while the members of the chaplaincy are known as death speakers, with the medics of the apothecarian being referred to as lifebinders. The gene seed of the Celestial Lions, being derived from the Imperial Fists, is noted to be one of the most stable throughout the entirety of the Adeptus Astartes. Despite the stability, this supply of Daunian gene seed is noted to display a number of flaws, specifically a number of deficient zygotes that result in an inability to produce the Betcher's gland or Susan membrane organs. This by extension means that each battle brother of the Celestial Lions is incapable of producing a Space Marine's acidic saliva, nor are the chapter's warriors able to enter a state of suspended animation in order to protect them from instances of intense physical trauma. And that concludes this edition of 40k Lore for Newcomers. If you like this video, consider supporting us on Patreon for more content. To those who are new to 40k, we hope you learned something. So, leave a comment below, and thanks for watching.